I am the top salesman at this luxury car dealership I have built my career on. Never saying no to a client, but today I am blocking a regular customer from getting his free maintenance. My coworkers' jaw dropped in shock. Are you out of your mind, Landon? That guy bought the only $400,000 top trim G900 in the shop. I nodded calmly. I know. He is exactly the one I am blocking.
But that
Client was so pissed his hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone to file a complaint. My manager, Mr. Henderson, came rushing over to play peacemaker. Xander, please calm down. He is just a rookie who doesn't know any better. Henderson tried to push past me. Come inside. I will personally handle your service. I took a step to the side, firmly blocking the entrance again. No. If you let him in, I quit right now. Zendervan's face turned a deep shade of purple. I just came for my free scheduled maintenance, he screamed. What the hell is your problem? I looked him dead in the eye, my voice cold as ice. My problem is you. The moment the words left my mouth, Xander completely lost it. He slammed his car keys onto the pavement with a loud metallic crack. Is this how you train your staff? I spent $500,000 here. He turned to the other customers in the showroom, his voice booming, people looking at. Cars stopped and stared. A few clients who are mid-signing their contracts put their pens down. What's going on? Why is there a fight? I heard the guy bought their most expensive SUV and they won't let him in for a checkup. Xander saw the crowd gathering and started playing the victim. Look at this. I just bought a top-tier G90 and this prick is banning me from the service bay. $400,000. Do you hear me? The crowd began to murmur in disapproval. They won't even service a car that expensive. This place is a joke. I was going to buy a truck today, but forget it. I'm not dealing with this attitude. A few guys tossed their brochures back on the tables and walked out the door. Mr. Henderson's face went pale as he realized he was losing business. He shoved me aside and tried to grab Xander's arm to pull him in. Mr. Vance, I am so sorry. Please, ignore him. He's an idiot. I'll fire him personally for this. But I moved faster, stepping right back into their path. No, he is not setting foot inside. Are you __insane? Xander roared. He ripped his arm away from the manager and got right in my face. Do you even know who I am? Do you know how much I've spent in this shop? His spit hit my cheek, but I didn't flinch. I know exactly who you are. You bought the G90 full cash on the 510th of last month. Then get the hell out of my way. It's a free maintenance. It's in the damn contract. Xander didn't want to talk anymore. He tried to bull his way past me into the lobby. I reached out and shoved my hand against his chest. The force sent him stumbling back 2 steps, nearly falling on his ass. The entire showroom went silent. Everyone was frozen in shock. A salesman just laid hands on a VIP client. Henderson looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Xander steadied himself, his eyes burning with pure rage. You actually touched me? I ignored him and pulled my phone out of my pocket. I hit a speed dial for the local precinct. Engine failure. Protocol 1. I said. The line was silent for exactly 1 second and a deep professional voice responded. Copy that. Don't move. 3 minutes. I hung up. Xander was still recording me shouting at his phone. A camera about lawsuits. The crowd was whispering, but I noticed something else. Mr. Henderson had stopped screaming at me. His pupils shrank as he stared at me in disbelief. Landon, what did you just say? Engine failure was the highest level emergency code in our dealership. It was the code we were taught to use only if a crime was in progress. It meant every single transaction had to stop immediately. Henderson's voice trembled. Are you sure about this? I nodded once and he stood his ground beside me. A few seconds later, sirens began to wail from every direction. Xander's arrogant expression flickered for a moment. You called the cops because I wanted an oil change. He threw his hands up looking at the crowd for support. You all see this? I'm Xander Vance. I spent a fortune here. This cycle blocks me, hits me, and now calls the police. What law did I break? Being too rich. The crowd started getting rowdy again. This is harassment. The guy just wants his car fixed. I'm never coming back to this dealership. They treat owners like criminals. Xander kept shouting, but his eyes were darting toward the street. I have a meeting. I don't have time for this circus. He turned around suddenly, desperate to get to his car. His sudden urge to leave confirmed everything I suspected. I looked at Mr. Henderson, who had finally caught on to the shift in Xander's body. Language. We shared a silent look of realization. Henderson moved to block one side of the glass doors. I lunged forward and grabbed Xander by the wrist. Before he could run, we had him boxed in. Xander's face went from red to a sickly pale white. He looked at the flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the windows. You're holding me here. This is kidnapping. This is illegal restraint. He fumbled with his phone, his fingers shaking violently. I'm going to post this. I'll destroy this place. You'll never sell another car in this state again. One of my colleagues, Joe, ran over looking terrified. Landon, you've got to be wrong. He's a regular. If he posts that video, we're all out of a job. Another salesman, Chase, joined in, his face white. Man, I've got a huge deal on the line. If the cops scare my client away, I'm screwed. Xander heard them, and his eyes filled with a desperate, twisted triumph. Listen to them. They have brains. Let me go right now. If you don't, I'm suing you into the ground. He tried to jerk his arm away and bolt for the exit. I didn't let go. My grip was like a vice. Henderson stepped in closer, sealing the exit completely. Xander saw he was trapped and snapped. Let go of me, you son of a bitch. He swung his elbow back with everything he had. It caught me right in the eye socket. Pain exploded behind my skull, and I felt warm blood trickling down my face. The room went dead silent. Xander looked like he wanted to kill me. He raised a fist to swing again. You think you can stop me? You're just a __ clerk. Stop, police. A voice boomed from the entrance. The officers rushed in and immediately saw the blood dripping down my face. One cop stepped between me and Xander, pushing him back. Stay down. Don't move. He looked over his shoulder. Someone get a first aid kit. The girl at the front desk ran over with some gauze and antiseptic. I took the gauze and pressed it against my brow. Before I could speak, Xander started screaming his head off. Officer, thank God you're here. This man is a lunatic. He pointed at me, his voice cracking with fake fear. They blocked me from leaving. They trapped me. I only hit him because I was scared for my life. It was self-defense. The lead officer ignored him and looked straight at me. Are you the one who called in the code? I nodded, ignoring the stinging in my eye. The officer's face was grim. You know that filing a false report like this is a felony, right? No, I said firmly, but I'm certain it's him. What makes you so sure? The officer asked. Xander let out a hysterical, jagged laugh. He's crazy. He's just obsessed with me. I looked past the officer, straight at the black G90 parked at the curb. Look at the car, I said, my voice steady. Check the trunk. There is something leaking out of the seal. Everyone turned to look at the beautiful luxury SUV. The black paint was polished to a mirror shine, but at the bottom corner of the trunk lid, there was a dark reddish brown streak. It wasn't oil. It wasn't water. The officer's eyes narrowed and his hand moved toward his radio. Xander's throat hitched as he watched the cop walk toward the car. He started sweating buckets despite the air conditioning. What are you looking at? He stammered. It's a new car. It's probably just some fluid leaking. That's why I'm here. Nobody answered him. The officer leaned in close to the streak, his expression hardening. Open the trunk. Now. Xander went into a full-blown panic. No way. You don't have a warrant. You can't touch my property. He backed away, trying to shield the car with his body. Not even the cops can search my car without a reason. He was talking big, but his lips were turning blue. Open the trunk, Xander, I said. What are you, a detective? Shut the hell up. He gripped his keys so hard his knuckles were white. Officer, I want to report this dealership for extortion, he yelled. The cop didn't blink. Watch your tone, sir. The crowd was thick now. Everyone holding up their phones to record. I was still bleeding, but I didn't move an inch. Henderson stepped up beside me. Just open it, Xander. If there's nothing wrong, we all go back to work. But if you keep refusing, it looks like you're hiding a body. The pressure from the crowd was getting to him. The officer frowned. Sir, if you cooperate, and everything is fine, this ends now. But your refusal is giving me probable cause. Xander's hands were shaking so hard, he dropped the keys. They hit the floor with a loud, sharp ring. He glared at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. Fine, look, but you're going to regret this. I picked up the keys and walked to the back of the SUV. Everyone held their breath as I pressed the electronic release. The trunk hissed open. It was empty, perfectly, unnervingly empty. No blood, no bodies, just a clean black carpet. The silence was deafening. Xander started laughing like a maniac. See nothing. My car is spotless. He ran over to the officer and poked a finger at my chest. This guy framed me. He assaulted me and kidnapped me. The officer looked at me, his disappointment clear. Where's the evidence you promised? Henderson looked at the floor, his face filled with shame. Joe, my coworker, finally snapped. I told you. You just ruined the shop's reputation. Over nothing. Chase groaned. My S-class client just walked out. Thanks for nothing, Landon. The crowd started to disperse, bored by the lack of a body. Xander straightened his silk tie. I'm pressing charges. The officer sighed. Landon, you need to come down to the station, but I didn't move. I was staring at the trunk. Something was wrong. It was too clean. The red streak on the outside didn't match the inside. I walked around the car one more time. Then the pieces clicked in my head. Ava. Got it. Nobody was listening to me anymore. The officer was already reaching for his radio to call in my code as a false report. Xander was laughing and adjusting his tie. Joe had his hand over his face. Chase was staring at the ceiling like a man considering a career change. Henderson had gone very still beside me with the specific stillness of someone who is preparing for the worst and has already started drafting the apology email. I walked back to the rear of the G90. The cargo liner, I said. Lift the cargo liner. There is nothing under the top trim G90, I said, speaking to the officer now, not to Xander. Has a hidden subfloor storage compartment beneath the standard cargo liner. It's marketed as a secondary secure storage option for the premium package. Most people who buy it don't even use it. I looked at the trunk, at the immaculate black carpet at the edges that were just slightly too perfect, but the chemical smell is in the carpet, not under it. Xander stopped, laughing. It was a small stop, a fraction of a second, but I had been selling cars for 7 years, and I knew how people sounded when they were performing confidence, and I knew how they sounded when it ran out, and the silence in that half second was the most honest thing he had done since he drove up. The officer looked at the carpet, then at Xander, then at me. Step back, he said to both of us. He leaned into the trunk and pulled at the cargo liner edge. The magnetic release gave with a soft click, and the subfloor panel lifted. The silence that followed was the kind that happens when a room understands something it cannot take back. It was not a body. I want to be clear about that because I know exactly what the word blood does to a room. What was under that panel? A folded cloth that had been white and was no longer white. A woman's silver bracelet with a clasp that had been bent out of shape. A cracked phone with a pink case and a fractured screen, and what appeared to be a yellow reflective strap, the kind cyclists wear. The officer did not touch anything. He stepped back. He reached for his radio. Every recording phone in the showroom swung from me to the open trunk. Xander had not moved. He was standing approximately 4 feet from the car, and he was not looking at the compartment. He was looking at the floor. That was the thing that told me everything I needed to know. The fact that he already knew what was in there, and the knowledge that the game was over, had landed on him before anyone else understood what they were looking at. That is not mine. His voice was different now. The booming showroom voice was completely gone. What was left was quieter and had something underneath That sounded a great deal like calculation. Someone put that there. This car was bought new. I have never... Sir, the officer's voice cut through. With the flat authority of someone done. Negotiating. Don't speak. Don't move. The crowd had gone extremely quiet. Not. The bored quiet of people who have been expecting excitement and were now losing interest. The other kind. The kind where people slowly understand that what they are watching is not entertainment. Xander tried one more time. I want to allow you right now. You people have no idea who you're dealing with. Nobody answered him. The officer was on his radio. His partner had moved to stand between Xander and the exit without anyone needing to give instruction. Henderson touched my arm. His hand was shaking slightly. The cyclist, he said, very low. There was a hit and run. Reported this morning 3 blocks from the highway on-ramp. A woman was taken to St. Catherine's critical condition. He looked at the yellow strap visible in the trunk. She was wearing a cycling vest. I looked at the strap, the same reflective yellow I had seen on every early morning cyclist in this city for the past 15 years. The same color my sister had been wearing. I pressed the gauze harder against my eye and said, nothing. The full picture came together over the next 40 minutes, which is a short amount of time for the complete unraveling of a person's constructed life. Traffic cameras from the on-ramp, the G900's own collision sensors, which auto-recorded on impact and stored data that Xander had tried to have deleted by bringing the car in for scheduled maintenance before anyone connected the dots. Paint transfer on a concrete median that exactly matched the G900's color code. The cyclist's cracked phone, which had been recording a route tracking app at the time of impact. Xander had not accidentally brushed her. He had hit her at speed and driven away. She had been 23 years old, training for her first amateur race. And when I heard that detail from the officer's radio, I had to breathe through my nose for a moment because something in my chest had just relocated. My sister was 31 when she died. Hit and run. Driver never found. I had learned that one stain can be the only voice a victim has left. I had also learned that the people who get away with things get away with them because everyone around them decides not to make a scene. Too much trouble, too much risk. The client is a VIP. The commission is too big. You don't want to be the one to start something. I had spent 7 years being very good at my job, and not once in 7 years had I used that goodness to look directly at something wrong and refuse to move. Today felt like the first time I had actually earned my paycheck. Xander was not quiet during the arrest. I want to be accurate about that because the versions of this story that circulated online later often described him as silent and broken, and that is not quite what happened. He was loud. He named for people, 2 of whom were city officials, and said they would hear about this. He talked about his lawyers with the desperate fluency of a man who had always believed that lawyers were the answer to every problem, including problems that are fundamentally not legal questions. He said the word lawsuit so many times that Joe, standing near the back wall, started silently counting on his fingers. What he did not do was explain the yellow cycling strap. He did not explain the bracelet with the bent clasp, which the victim's boyfriend later identified as one she wore every time she rode. He did not explain the chemical smell embedded in the pristine carpet of a car that had supposedly never been used for anything except driving. The officer clicked the handcuffs on and Xander made a sound. That was not a word. The crowd had its phones up. There were approximately 19 people actively recording, which I know because that number was cited in 3 separate news reports the following morning. The clips ran for various lengths. The most shared was 47 seconds, beginning from the moment the subfloor panel lifted and ending on Xander's face as the officer turned him toward the exit. That face, I do not take pleasure in describing it, but I will be accurate. It was the face of a man who had spent his entire adult life believing that money bought a specific kind of immunity and who had just discovered the exact price at which that immunity expired. The silk tie was still perfect. The suit was still pressed, but the face underneath all of it had lost whatever architecture held it in the shape of arrogance. And what was Underneath was smaller than I expected. "I'm Xander Vance," he said one more time, to no one in particular as they walked. In past the rows of cars he had never actually needed, and out through the glass doors. The officer, to his credit, said nothing. Henderson stood beside me. After they were gone, the showroom was very quiet. A few people were still recording. A few had already left. Joe was sitting on a display model bumper, looking at his phone, and from the expression on his face, I assumed he was reading the same thing everyone else was starting to read. The cyclist, Henderson, said, "I know, if he had gotten into the service bay, they would have reset the sensors, detailed the trunk, and disposed of anything that needed disposing of." I folded the used gauze in my hand. That's what the maintenance booking was for, not an oil change, cleanup. Henderson made a sound that had no words in it. "The streak," I said, "on the outside of the trunk seal, drainage gap on the subfloor. When liquid pools in there, it works its way out. It's a known issue on the G90. Actually, owners complain about it in the forums. The design team knows about it." I looked at the empty space where the car had been still roped off now, waiting for forensics. He didn't know about it. He cleaned the inside and didn't think about the seam. "How did you know to look?" I thought about my sister, about the year after, about the 12-month obsession with details that had eventually turned itself into a career. Because fixating on the mechanical honesty of cars was easier than fixating on the road where she had died. I just looked, I said. Henderson put his hand on my shoulder once briefly, and then took it away. I almost let him in. He said, "I know I called you an idiot in front of everyone. I know that too." He was quiet for a moment. "From this moment on, nobody touches that car except the police." He said it loud enough for the remaining people in the showroom to hear, then lowered just to me, "And nobody touches your job. Not today. Not after this. Not ever." I nodded. I kept the gauze pressed to my eye, and I looked at the empty parking space, and I thought about a 23-year-old woman in a hospital, somewhere 3 blocks from the highway, on-ramp training for her first race, and about the fact that the only reason anyone was going to be held accountable was that a leaked seam in an expensive car had left one reddish-brown stain on the outside of a polished bumper. One stain found me in the break room about an hour later. He sat down across from me and put his hands on the table and looked at them for a long time. "I called you crazy," he said. "You did?" "I was worried about my commission. I know there was a woman in a hospital, and I was worried about my commission." He said it like he was testing how it sounded, repeating it to understand what kind of person would think that, which was his way of processing that the answer was him. "I'm sorry, Landon." I looked at him. "I know you are," I said. "I'm not angry. You should be probably, but being angry at you isn't the most useful thing I can do right now." Chase came in 5 minutes later and did not say anything at all, just sat in the chair in the corner and stayed there for a while, which was its own kind of apology, and I accepted it as such. The news hit in waves. The first wave was the wrong one. Salesman loses mind, assaults VIP customer. That ran for about 4 hours on local social media before the second wave hit, which was the showroom footage from 16 different angles, all uploaded within the same 30-minute window. The second wave was different. Luxury dealership. Employee stops hit-and-run suspect from destroying evidence. Salesman bled to catch a criminal. How a car dealership employee caught a hit-and-run driver with a stain the size of a quarter. That last headline was my cousin's doing. She texted me the link at 11 that night with 3 exclamation points and a photograph of her television screen. By the morning, the video of the subfloor panel opening had been viewed 4 million times. The cyclist's name was Maya. I learned it from a news alert the following day. Maya Chun, 23, a graduate student and amateur cyclist who had been training for a regional charity race. She was alive. Critical condition had become stable. Stable had become improving. She had 3 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, and a concussion that had kept her unconscious for 15 hours, which is 15 hours during which the man who hit her had been at home, calmly booking a service appointment. Her family came to the dealership 4 days later. Her father was a quiet man in a gray jacket who shook my hand for a long time without saying anything, and then said very simply, "Thank you for not moving." That was the only sentence that mattered, and it mattered completely. Xander's lawyers were very expensive and very busy, and ultimately not very useful. The collision data from the G900's own sensors was not something that could be argued away. The GPS records placed the car at the intersection at the exact time of the reported incident. The pain transfer matched. The cyclist's phone data matched. The victim's bracelet had skin cells under the clasp from where it had been torn. He tried the planted evidence approach, which lasted exactly as long as it took the forensics team to confirm that the bracelet's DNA matched Maya and nobody else. He tried the borrowed vehicle approach, which required him to name someone who had borrowed the car, which he could not do. He tried the emotional breakdown approach, which involved his Leia releasing a statement about stress and personal difficulties, which the internet received approximately the way you would expect. What Xander Vance discovered at significant personal expense was that the things money genuinely cannot buy include GPS data, physical evidence, and the goodwill of a public that has watched you laugh at a bleeding man who was trying to do the right thing. The trial was 8 months later. I was not there for most of it. I had agreed to testify, but not to watch. The lawyers told me what I needed to know. Guilty on the primary charge of felony hit and run with serious bodily injury. Guilty on the secondary charge of evidence tampering. The sentence was substantial. The silk tie was not present in the courtroom photographs, which felt like a detail that would have meant something to him. I was in the showroom on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed. A text from Maya. She had gotten my number through the detective who had handled the case with my permission. We had exchanged a few messages over the months. Nothing heavy. She was not the kind of person to make me carry the weight of what I had done for her, which I appreciated more than I could easily explain. The text said, "First ride back today, 6 miles. Thought you should." No. I put the phone in my pocket. A customer was walking through the glass doors. Late 40s, unhurried, interested in the G90 range, which had been selling at a notably higher rate since the story broke for reasons I had opinions about, but was too professional to discuss on the floor. You walked over it. I showed them the cargo system, the magnetic release, the subfloor panel that lifted on a smooth hinge, the hidden compartment that now came with a small printed card explaining its features, which the design team had quietly improved to address the drainage seam issue. The customer was impressed. "You know these cars," they said. "I spent a lot of time with them," I said. I looked at the showroom, at the polished floors and the clean smell of the place, and the empty service bay visible through the side window at the spot near the entrance, where the reddish-brown streak had been on the outside of a bumper before. Forensics cleaned it away. Everyone thought I was destroying the dealership. The truth was simpler than that. Simpler than motives and backstory and the 7 years I had spent learning every seam and sensor and drainage point of every car that came through these doors. I was trying to stop someone from driving away. And that morning, a 23-year-old woman had ridden 6 miles on a Tuesday in a city where someone was going to be held accountable. That was the only ending I needed. Leave a comment telling me, did they deserve what happened to them, or do you think the revenge should have been even harsher? And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional drama and revenge stories.